I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, staring at my husband of 43 years tangled up in my sheets with Carolyn Bennett, the woman I'd called my best friend since we were 17 years old. The sound that came out of my mouth wasn't even human. It was something raw and broken, like my soul was trying to escape my body. Leon jumped up so fast he nearly fell off the bed. Carolyn grabbed for the blanket, her eyes wide with fear, but I didn't care about her modesty, not anymore. "Evelyn, baby, I can explain," Leon started. "Get out," I said. My voice was steady, too steady, like all the rage inside me had frozen into ice. "Both of you, get out of my house." "Now wait a minute," Carolyn had the nerve to say. "We need to talk about this like adults." "My house!" I screamed at this time. "This house that my grandmother left me. This house that my name is on the deed. You got 30 minutes to get your things and get out before I call the police." Leon grabbed his pants from the floor. "Evelyn, please, let's just talk." "Talk?" I laughed, but it sounded like crying. "You want to talk now? After I find you in my bed with my best friend?" I pulled my cell phone from my pocket. "I'm calling my son. Terrence will help you pack. You got 29 minutes now." That's when they both realized I wasn't playing. That's when they saw the steel in my spine that they must have forgotten was there. Before we continue, shout out to Keisha Williams from Detroit. We appreciate the love you show by commenting and sharing. Let me tell you how I got here. How a 72-year-old woman who spent her whole life putting others first ended up standing in her bedroom watching her entire world crumble. My name is Evelyn Grace Mitchell, and I was born in 1953 in a little shotgun house in Birmingham, Alabama. My grandmother, Big Mama Rose, raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 6. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. Worked as a housekeeper for white families during the day and took in laundry at night. She saved every penny she could. When I turned 23, Big Mama Rose bought this house. A beautiful 3-bedroom brick home in a nice black neighborhood in Atlanta. She said it was for both of us, but when she passed in 1982, she left it to me. Only me. The deed had my name, Evelyn Grace Mitchell, written clear as day. I met Leon Mitchell at church in 1981. He was handsome, had a good job at the post office, and he made me laugh. We got married in 1982, right after Big Mama passed. I was grieving and lonely, and Leon was there. He moved into my house and we built a life together. We had one son, Terrence, born in 1985. That boy was my whole heart. Smart as a whip, kind, respectful. He grew up to be a lawyer, married a sweet woman named Angela, and gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren, Amari and Zion. And then there was Carolyn. I met Carolyn Bennett in high school. We were both 17, both trying to figure out life in a world that wasn't always kind to black girls with big dreams. We held each other down through everything. First loves, first heartbreaks, civil rights marches, job struggles, everything. When Carolyn's husband died 15 years ago, I was there. I helped her through the grief, helped her manage her money, made sure she ate. And when she said she was struggling to keep up with her rent 5 years ago, I did what any best friend would do. I invited her to move in. Leon wasn't thrilled about it, but he didn't say no. We had the space. The 3rd bedroom was just sitting there since Terrence moved out. Carolyn was family. That's what I told myself. That's what I believed. She paid rent the first year, $400 a month for a furnished room in a nice neighborhood. But then she lost her job at the grocery store. She was 67 and nobody wanted to hire her. "Don't worry about the rent," I told her. "You're my sister. We'll figure it out." That was 4 years ago. She never paid rent again. But it was fine. I had my retirement from teaching, and Leon had his pension from the post office. We were comfortable. Carolyn became part of our daily routine. She'd make coffee in the morning, and the 3 of us would sit at the kitchen table and talk. She'd go to church with us on Sundays, come to family dinners, play with my grandchildren. She called Leon brother-in-law and would tease him about his growing belly. I thought we were family. I thought I was blessed to have my husband and my best friend under the same roof, all of us taking care of each other in our golden years. I was a fool. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. 3 months ago, I noticed Leon started dressing nicer. He'd put on cologne just to sit around the house. He'd offer to go to the grocery store with Carolyn, just the two of them. They'd be gone for hours. Traffic was bad, he'd say. We ran into some old friends, she'd say. I believed them. Why wouldn't I? This was my husband of over 40 years. This was my best friend of over 50 years. 2 months ago, I noticed they'd get quiet when I walked into a room. They'd be laughing about something, and then I'd appear, and the laughter would die. What's so funny? I'd ask. Oh, nothing, Carolyn would say. Just some silly thing on TV. But the TV wouldn't even be on. 1 month ago, I saw them holding hands in the kitchen, just for a second. When they heard me coming, they dropped hands fast and stepped apart. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, baby, Leon said. Just fine. I told myself I was seeing things. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that after 43 years of marriage, I knew my husband. He wouldn't do this to me. Not Leon. Not my Leon. Last week, I found a receipt in Leon's pants pocket when I was doing laundry. It was from a hotel. The nice one downtown, the one with the fancy restaurant. The date was from 2 weeks ago, a Thursday afternoon when I was at my book club meeting at church. When I asked him about it, he said he'd taken an old buddy there for lunch. You know how it is, he said. Sometimes you want to treat yourself somewhere nice. But the receipt showed a room charge, room 412, for 3 hours. I didn't say anything. I just tucked that receipt into my Bible and kept watching. Then yesterday, my friend Diane from church pulled me aside after service. Evelyn, she said quietly, I need to tell you something, and you might not want to hear it. My stomach dropped. What is it? I saw Leon and Carolyn at the movies last Tuesday, the 2 o'clock showing. They were holding hands. And honey... She paused, looking pained. They kissed. I saw them kiss. I wanted to call her a liar. I wanted to scream that she was mistaken. But I knew. Deep in my bones, I knew she was telling the truth. Thank you for telling me, I said, keeping my voice steady. I appreciate you. I went home that Sunday evening and acted normal. I cooked dinner, fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, cornbread, Leon's favorite. We all sat around the table like we always did, laughing and talking like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was planning. Monday morning, I told them I was going to visit my son Terrence and his family. I said I'd be gone all day and might stay for dinner. You two hold down the fort, I said cheerfully as I grabbed my purse. I didn't go to Terrence's house. I drove to a coffee shop 2 blocks away and waited. At 1:30, I drove back home. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I parked down the street and walked quietly to my house. I used my key as softly as possible. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked down the hallway toward my bedroom, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. Carolyn's high-pitched giggle and Leon's deep chuckle. Coming from my bedroom. From my bed that Big Mama Rose helped me pick out when I first moved into this house. I pushed open the door. And there they were. After I told them to get out, after I screamed and cried and threatened to call the police, they finally started moving. Leon was throwing clothes into a garbage bag, looking pathetic in his wrinkled shirt. Carolyn was crying, makeup running down her face, begging me to understand. "We didn't mean for it to happen," she sobbed. It just happened." "Nothing just happens," I said coldly. "You made choices. Both of you made choices." Terrence arrived 30 minutes later. I'd called him from the bedroom doorway while Leon and Carolyn scrambled to get dressed. I didn't tell him what happened, just said I needed him right away. When he walked in and saw his father with packed bags and Carolyn crying hysterically, his face went hard. "What's going on?" he demanded. "Your father and Carolyn are leaving," I said simply. "They'll need help carrying their things." Terrence looked at his father. "Dad?" Leon couldn't even look at his son. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And just like that, my son understood. His face crumbled for just a second before that lawyer mask came down. "Get your stuff and get out," he told his father. "Now!" It took 2 hours to get all of Leon's things out of my house. 43 years of marriage, reduced to a pile of boxes and bags. Carolyn only had 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. For someone who lived in my house for 5 years rent-free, she sure traveled light. When they were finally gone, when the door closed behind them, I stood in my living room and looked around. The house felt different, emptier, but also cleaner somehow, like an infection had been removed. Terrence put his arm around me. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I can't believe Dad would do this." "Me neither, baby," I whispered. "Me neither." He stayed with me that night. We ordered Chinese food and sat on the couch, not really watching TV, just being together. He asked if I wanted to talk about it, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Leon. "Don't answer it," Terrence said. But I did. I needed to hear what he had to say. "Evelyn," Leon's voice was rough, like he'd been crying. "Please, can we talk? I have nothing to say to you. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it's still me. It's still your husband. We can work through this." "Where are you staying?" I interrupted. He paused. "At a motel, the one off Highway 85. "Good. Stay there. And Leon?" I took a deep breath. "I'm filing for divorce. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." I hung up before he could respond. Terrence was staring at me with pride in his eyes. "That's right, Mom. Don't let him talk his way back in." But as the night wore on and Terrence finally went home, as I lay alone in my bed for the first time in 43 years, the brave face I'd been wearing cracked. I cried. I cried for the years I'd wasted. I cried for the friendship I'd lost. I cried for the family dinners that would never be the same. I cried until there were no more tears left. When morning came, I woke up with a splitting headache and swollen eyes. I dragged myself to the kitchen to make coffee. And that's when I saw it. An envelope on the kitchen table. My name written on it in Carolyn's handwriting. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter and a key. The key I'd given her to my house 5 years ago. The letter said, "Evelyn, I know sorry isn't enough. I know I broke something that can't be fixed. But I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. Leon and we just understood each other. We were both lonely, even with you there. I know that doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't excuse what we did. I'm leaving the key because I don't deserve to have access to your home anymore. I also need to tell you something. Leon and I have been planning to—" The letter ended there, mid-sentence, like she'd been interrupted or changed her mind about what to say. Planning to what? I stood there in my kitchen, holding that unfinished letter, and felt a chill run down my spine. What weren't they telling me? What else had they been planning? That's when my doorbell rang. I looked at the clock. 7:30 in the morning. Who would be here this early? I opened the door to find a woman I'd never seen before. She was about my age, well-dressed, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Are you Evelyn Mitchell?" she asked. "Yes. Who are you?" "My name is Patricia Dawson. I'm Leon's first wife." The world tilted sideways. "What did you just say?" "I know this is a shock," Patricia said gently, "but I need to talk to you. Can I come in? It's about Leon. There's something you need to know before it's too late." I let Patricia Dawson into my house, my mind spinning like a top. Leon's first wife? We'd been married for 43 years, He never mentioned a first wife. Not once. Patricia sat down on my couch, her purse clutched in her lap. She looked as nervous as I felt. "I don't understand," I said, sitting across from her. "Leon never told me he was married before." "That's because he never divorced me," Patricia said quietly. "We got married in 1979 in New Orleans. When I found out I was pregnant, Leon panicked, said he wasn't ready to be a father. One day in 1981, he just disappeared. Took his clothes and left. I never saw him again." My mouth went dry. "You're saying—" "I'm saying Leon committed bigamy when he married you, Evelyn. Our marriage was never legally dissolved, which means your marriage to him was never legal." I should have been upset. I should have been angry. But instead I started laughing. Not a happy laugh. A wild, slightly unhinged laugh that made Patricia look worried. "So I wasted 43 years with a man I was never actually married to?" I gasped between laughs. "All this time, I wasn't even his wife?" "I'm so sorry," Patricia said. "I only found out he was here in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. My daughter, his daughter, she's been looking for him for years. She hired a private investigator, and they tracked him to this address. When I saw the house was in your name alone, I got worried. I've seen men like Leon before. They find women with assets and they use them," I finished, the laughter dying in my throat. "Oh my God! The house! That's what Carolyn meant in the letter." I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the unfinished letter, bringing it back to show Patricia. "She wrote that they were planning something. Planning to what?" Patricia read the letter, her face growing darker. "May I use your bathroom?" I pointed her down the hall, confused by the sudden change of subject. But when she came back 5 minutes later, she looked grim. "Evelyn, do you have a safe in this house? Somewhere you keep important documents?" "Yes, in my bedroom closet. Why?" "Have you checked it recently?" My blood turned to ice. I ran to my bedroom, Patricia right behind me. I knelt down and opened the small safe where I kept my important papers, the deed to the house, my birth certificate, Big Mama Rose's will, my marriage license to Leon. The safe was empty. Everything was gone. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." Patricia knelt beside me. "They took them. Leon and Carolyn. They were planning to forge your signature and transfer the deed. I've seen this scam before. A man I knew in New Orleans tried it on his girlfriend. By the time she realized what happened, he'd sold her house out from under her." I couldn't breathe. My vision went spotty. This house, Big Mama Rose's house, my house, they were trying to steal it. "We need to call the police," Patricia said firmly. "Right now." The next few hours were a blur. Police came and took my statement. They put out a warrant for Leon's arrest for theft of legal documents. They couldn't find him at the motel. He'd already checked out. Terrence arrived within 20 minutes of my call, Angela right behind him. When I told them everything, about Patricia, about the bigamy, about the stolen documents, my son's face transformed into something I'd never seen before. Pure rage. "I'm going to destroy him," Terrence said quietly. "Legally, I'm going to take him apart piece by piece." Patricia stayed with me that whole day. We talked for hours. She told me about her life, about the daughter Leon never met, a woman named Shanice who was now a nurse in New Orleans with 3 kids of her own. She showed me pictures on her phone. The resemblance to Terrence was unmistakable. They had the same eyes, the same smile. "You have a half-sister," I told Terrence when he came back from filing paperwork at the courthouse. "And 3 half-nieces and nephews." Terrence looked at the photos Patricia showed him. Something in his face softened. "All this time I had family I didn't know about." "Your father robbed you of that," Patricia said gently. "He robbed all of us." That evening, news came from the police. They'd found Leon and Carolyn at a title company, trying to file paperwork to transfer my house into Leon's name. They'd forged my signature on multiple documents. Both were arrested on the spot. The documents they'd created showed that I had gifted the house to Leon as a retirement present. They'd even forged a notary stamp. If they'd succeeded, I would have lost everything. But they didn't succeed. Because Patricia showed up. Because I'd kicked them out before they could finish their plan. Because God was watching out for me even when I didn't know I needed watching. 2 days later, I stood in a courtroom for the first time in my life. Terrence was my lawyer, which felt surreal. My baby boy, standing up in court defending his mother against his own father. Leon was there in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller somehow, older. Carolyn sat next to him at the defense table, crying quietly. The prosecutor laid out the case. Bigamy, fraud, attempted theft, forgery. The charges kept coming. When it was time for Leon to speak, he stood up. "Your Honor, I know I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Terrence's voice cut through the courtroom like a knife. "You call marrying 2 women a mistake? You call stealing from your own family a mistake? You call abandoning your first child a mistake?" The judge banged her gavel. "Order." But Terrence wasn't done. He presented evidence, documents showing Leon had been planning this for months, text messages between Leon and Carolyn that made my stomach turn. They'd been together for over 2 years, not just a few months. They'd been planning to take my house, sell it, and move to Florida together. My client, Mrs. Evelyn Mitchell, took this woman into her home out of the goodness of her heart, Terrence said, gesturing to me. She fed her, sheltered her, treated her like family, and this is how she was repaid, with betrayal and theft. When it came time for Carolyn to speak, she looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me, but I am. Leon said, he said you didn't need that big house. He said you'd be happier in a smaller place. He made it sound like we were doing you a favor." "A favor?" I stood up without meaning to. "You thought stealing my home was a favor?" The judge didn't tell me to sit down. She just watched as I continued. "That house was my grandmother's dream," I said, my voice shaking. She worked herself to the bone cleaning white people's houses so she could buy that property. She left it to me because she trusted me to protect it. And you, I looked at Leon. You tried to take that away from me. You tried to take the last piece of her I had left. Leon wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the floor. The judge's ruling was swift. Leon was sentenced to 3 years in prison for bigamy, fraud, and attempted theft. Carolyn got 18 months for her role in the scheme. Both were ordered to pay restitution, though I knew I'd never see that money, but I didn't care about the money. I cared that justice was served. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in years, maybe ever. Patricia walked beside me, and Terrence had his arm around my shoulders. "You did good, Mom," he said. "We did good," I corrected him. That evening, my house was full of people. Patricia and her daughter Shanice had flown in for the trial. Terrence and Angela were there with Amari and Zion. My church friends, Diane, Sister Ruth, Brother James, Pastor Williams, they all came by with food and prayers. Shanice and Terrence sat together on the couch, looking at old photos, getting to know each other. Watching them, watching this family come together despite Leon's attempts to keep us apart, I felt something inside me heal. "You know what's funny?" I said to Patricia as we stood in the kitchen, watching everyone laugh and talk. "I thought my life was over when I found them in my bed. I thought I'd lost everything." "But you didn't," Patricia said. "You found yourself." She was right. For 43 years, I'd been Leon's wife, Carolyn's best friend, Terrence's mother, Big Mama Rose's granddaughter. I'd been so many things to so many people, but I'd forgotten to be Evelyn, just Evelyn. Over the next few weeks, I started reclaiming my life. I redecorated the bedroom, got rid of everything that reminded me of Leon. I joined a book club, not the church one, but a new one at the library, where we read spicy romance novels and drank wine. I started taking a painting class at the senior center. Patricia and I became friends, real friends. She stayed in Atlanta for a month, and we spent almost every day together. She understood what it was like to be betrayed by someone you loved. We healed together. Shanice brought her kids to visit, and my house was full of children's laughter for the first time in years. Amari and Zion had new cousins to play with. Terrence had the sister he'd always wanted. Leon had tried to rob me of my family, but instead, he'd given me a bigger one. 3 months after the trial, I got a letter from Leon. It was sent from prison, addressed to Mrs. Evelyn Mitchell, which made me laugh because I'd never actually been Mrs. Mitchell at all. The letter was full of apologies and excuses. He said he'd made mistakes. He said he still loved me. He said if I could just forgive him, when he got out, we could start over. I read it once, then tore it into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. I didn't need Leon's apologies. I didn't need his love. I didn't need anything from him. I had myself. I had my son and grandchildren. I had new family in Patricia and Shanice. I had my church community. I had my friends. And most importantly, I had my house, Big Mama Rose's house, standing strong just like she'd taught me to stand. One Sunday morning, Pastor Williams asked me to share my testimony with the church. I stood up in front of 200 people and told them my story. I told them about the betrayal, the pain, the anger, but I also told them about the strength I'd found, the freedom, the peace. Sometimes God has to remove people from our lives to make room for better things, I said. I thought Leon and Carolyn were my blessings, but they were blocking my blessings. When they left, when I stood up for myself, that's when the real blessings came. The church erupted in amens and applause. After the service, at least a dozen women came up to me. Some were crying. They told me their own stories, husbands who took advantage of them, friends who betrayed them, family members who used them. They thanked me for being brave enough to speak up. "You showed us it's never too late to fight back," one woman said. "I'm 75 years old, and I've been letting my son steal my Social Security checks for 5 years. After hearing you today, I'm going to the police tomorrow." That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was for every woman who'd been told she was too old to start over, too old to fight back, too old to matter. We were never too old. We were never too anything. On the 6-month anniversary of the day I kicked Leon out, I threw a party. I invited everyone who'd stood by me, Terrence and Angela, Patricia and Shanice, my church family, my new friends from book club and painting class. We filled Big Mama Rose's house with music and laughter and love. We ate good food, fried chicken and collard greens and cornbread, sweet potato pie and peach cobbler. We danced in the living room like we were 20 years old again. At one point, I stood on the porch and looked out at my neighborhood. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. My house stood strong behind me, full of light and life and love. I thought about Big Mama Rose and how proud she'd be. Not because I'd kept the house, although I had, but because I'd kept my dignity. I'd kept my strength. I'd kept myself. "Thank you, Big Mama," I whispered, "for teaching me to stand tall, for teaching me that I was worth fighting for." Inside, someone started playing music. Aretha Franklin, "Respect." Everyone started singing along, and I went back inside to join them. At 72 years old, I was finally free. Free from a fake marriage to a lying man. Free from a toxic friendship with a backstabbing woman. Free from being used and taken for granted. I was just Evelyn now. Evelyn Grace Mitchell, owner of her own home, protector of her grandmother's legacy, mother and grandmother and friend and sister and survivor. And that was more than enough. That was everything. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.